Jonathan Smith Show on Indie Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indie Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indie Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indie Sports Ticket. You want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe watch it on X, __ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. Maybe you're listening on that Indie Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. You can also listen to the Dan Dockett Show there as well. No matter how you're tuning in, it is greatly, greatly appreciated. As always, the NBA draft, it's in full swing after round one of the NBA draft last night. Why the draft is 2 nights in a row now, I do not know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But round two is tonight at 8 o'clock. And if you are an Indiana Pacers fan, then you are invested because the Pacers officially have not one, but 2 selections tonight. They traded for the 38th pick in this year's NBA draft with the San Antonio Spurs. In exchange, the Pacers are sending a future second-round pick and cash considerations for the 38th pick in tonight's draft. And the picks for the Pacers are the exact same. They can still use another guard since Tyrese Halliburton's out, right? It's always nice to have another two-way wing. Okay, they also need depth at center, and they could potentially, plug a couple of those. I don't want to call them holes because they're not, major needs. I mean, this team just did go to Game 7 of the NBA Finals, but you can always make your team better, and it's important too because other teams get better year in and year out. We see it time and time again. And so I've got some ideas for players that the Pacers could take with that 38th pick tonight. Guys that can actually come in and contribute, because whoever they get at 54, probably going to be a project or an older college player that'll wind up playing in the G League. It's probably what they're going to get with that 54th pick. I think the reason why they traded up or acquired that 38th pick was so that they could have a guy who could come in and play this year, which makes me think that they're probably going to take a guard. And you said, well, Jonathan, why would they use a second-round pick on a guy who could play this year as opposed to, just going and getting a free agent? The answer is the money stuff. And look, this Pacers team's awesome. I love the front office. Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan and the rest of that front office has done an excellent job building this Pacers team. And I think that they've done a good job because they're just realistic people. You have to know who you are if you want to get better at things. And if you're a general manager, you have to know exactly what your team is if you want to get better. And let's just be really honest here. Pacers are not going back to the NBA Finals this next season because they're not going to have Tyrese Halliburton, who's going to be out all year with that Achilles tear. That's the very simple reality of it. And this is where being a general manager is hard. And this is the part of being a general manager or president of basketball operations that isn't really discussed enough. You work for someone. You have an owner. And in the case of the Pacers, they want to keep Miles Turner around at around $30 million a year. That's probably what the number is going to be. And since they don't really have much of an opportunity to go win the NBA Finals this next season, they want to stay under the apron. That way they don't have to pay the luxury tax, because I'm sure that the owners of the Indiana Pacers don't want to pay the luxury tax in a year where they're probably not going to win the NBA Finals because their best player is hurt. So I believe that the Pacers acquired that 38th pick so that they could draft a guard to kind of help spell some of those Tyrese Halliburton minutes, as opposed to going out in free agency and, paying, I believe that not a minimum contract, but the vet minimum, I think is a little over $5.5 million a year. Obviously, a second round pick comes much, much cheaper than that. So I think that they made this acquisition of the 38th pick. That way they could stay under the cap and still fill that guard vacancy that they have with the Tyrese Halliburton injury, which means to me, I think that they're going to take a guard who can handle the ball. And when you look at this Pacers franchise, what do they have a lot of? Shooting and length. And I think that the Pacers are going to go get a guard that can shoot the basketball and is long. Tyrese Proctor, guard out of Duke, only 21 years old. The guy can really play. He can handle the basketball. I don't know how much Duke you watched this year, I watched a lot of Duke because I wanted to see Cooper Flagg. I wanted to see Maluwak. I wanted to see Con Knipple, who went to the Hornets, which is brutal. He's going to go there and die because he's going to stand in the corner and watch LaMelo Ball take 38 shots a game and shoot 38% from the field on those shots. It's going to be terrible. So I watched a lot of Duke, and because of that, I saw a lot of Tyrese Proctor. Love this dude. So good. Handles the ball really well. He's great handling the basketball in the screen and roll, reads defense as well, just makes smart decisions with the basketball. And that's what you want from any guard that you draft, no matter where you take them at. So Tyrese Proctor is an excellent, excellent option for the Pacers tonight with that 38th pick. He can also play off the ball, which is really important to play on this Indiana Pacers team because no one pounds the air out of the basketball. It's part of why this team is such a joy to watch. And Tyrese Proctor, because of his ability to shoot the basketball, because this dude can really shoot the basketball, because of his ability to shoot it, he can play on or off the ball. Right, and look, they had Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple bringing the ball up some last year, so like he played off the ball a lot at Duke. Like he can play on or off it. Does a really good job of not getting sped up. I think that's a really important thing, and just seems like a very smart basketball player. Like I said, makes a lot of the right reads, knows where to be on defense. So really like Tyrese Proctor. He does have some concerns because if there were no concerns, he wouldn't be picked 38th. He'd be picked in the lottery or whatever. He's small. Like he's tall and he's long. You know, he's like 6'4.25" without shoes. So in shoes, he's probably like 6'6". You know, he's got a 6'7" wingspan. So tall, long, but he's got to put on some weight. Like he is noticeably small. Like he doesn't, like he weighs 183 pounds at 6'4". You got to be bigger than that. That's honestly a little disappointing. The fact that he's been in college for 3 years and was incapable of putting on, you know, of playing at like 190 this last year. He's got to find a way to put on some weight and to get a little bit stronger, right? Especially if you're going to play in the NBA against grown men. And I think that lack of strength is part of why he really struggled to finish at the rim. Didn't finish through contact very well, and that limited his ability to score inside. Because look, man, like you can make the right read coming off of a ball screen time and time again, but you know, like if they stick with the roller and you can't finish, you know, through or over or around contact, like, it doesn't really matter. So he's got to work on finishing at the rim, but I think that problem will be solved when he puts a little bit of weight on. He's not very physical on defense, which when you're a smaller guy, you have to be more physical because guys are going to look to post you up and just kind of use their strength to overwhelm you. And look, man, 21 years old, going into the NBA, like if you're getting overpowered by like college dudes, like you just wait until you've got Lou Dort running at you. So he's got to put on weight. Like I think that'll answer a lot of the questions about him coming out of Duke. But offensively, I think he fits really well. He can handle it. He can play off the ball. Good catch and shoot guy. You know, which checks all the boxes of what the Pacers want in an offensive player. I think once he puts some weight on, that'll kind of help him out defensively because he's a good defender. Like moves his feet well. Like he's not gonna defend the opposing team's best player, but I do think that, you know, in about 4 or 5 years, you know, when he's 26, 27, you know, kind of around his prime, then he'll be a guy who, you know, like if he's defending the other team's second best player, like you're fine with that. So I really like Tyrese Proctor out of Duke. We'll see whether or not the Pacers decide to pull the trigger on him or not. Another guy, I want to give you a big, I want to give you a guard, and then I want to give you a wing. So here's the big. Janai Broome from Auburn. Almost the National Player of the Year. Older guy, obviously, but I like him. I really do. I think that he's a guy who he probably won't have a long, lengthy career where he's, you know, starting and all that kind of stuff, but I think he could be a rotational big man. Okay, he blocks shots really well. He's a very effective shot blocker. You know, he's a big dude. He's 6'9" without shoes, so he's playing at around 6'11". He's got a 7-foot wingspan, so he's tall, long arms, all those things that you want. And that allows him, even though he's not an overly explosive athlete, it allows him to protect the rim. Like, think Marc Gasol. Like, Marc Gasol wasn't an overwhelmingly explosive athlete, but he has a Defensive Player of the Year trophy in his trophy cabinet because of his ability to protect the rim, despite not being, Dwight Howard skying up to the top of the backboard to block shots. So Johni Broome, a guy who can really kind of protect the glass. He can rebound. And we all know the Pacers need a center who can rebound, either to play alongside Miles Turner or just come in off the bench and just give them a different look. He's a really strong player, very thick, and, he just kind of knows how to just position himself well. And when he gets on the inside, man, like he's going to box you out and he's going to grab the rebound. It's amazing. He can also score on the block. That'll make Dan so happy. You can throw it into him, and he's a strong player, so he can finish through contact. He was really crafty at Auburn, the way that he was able to kind of generate his own shot. So good player who can score on the block. He's got really good touch. Is he going to be a three-point shooter at some point? Probably not, but he does have a way to score the basketball. So, like, can he come in? Can he rebound? Can he finish around the rim? Can he set good screens? And can he protect the rim on defense? He can do all those things. So I really like Johni Broome. He sets really good screens as well. Like I said, he's just a big, strong dude. And like when you're big and you're strong, like you're probably going to set good picks. And Johni Broome did that all year at Auburn this last year, right? That is another pretty transferable skill to the NBA. We'll see if he develops, a three-point jumper or not. Like I said, he's got pretty good touch. Like when the ball hits the rim on a shot that Johni Broome takes, it's like a feather, man. Like it's just so soft the way that it comes out of his hand. So I think he's got the potential to be a guy who can maybe step out and at a minimum hit, like a 15 to 17 footer. Does he become a guy who can make threes at some point? I don't know. We'll see. Concerns. Lateral quickness. And this is why I don't think he can be a starting center or power forward. Teams are just going to kind of put him in screen and roll, make him move his feet. He's not laterally quick. And that's really problematic in the NBA when there's a ton of space and teams like to go at mismatches. So we'll kind of see that once again, like that's why he's not a starting caliber center or power forward in the NBA, but he can play, 25 minutes a night. Like I said, not a great shooter. Doesn't pass the ball great out of the roll. That's something that he's going to have to work on as well. But once again, like if he's a guy who can just come in off the bench, rebound, and finish around the rim a little bit, then he'll find a role somewhere on some team. Wouldn't mind it if it was the Pacers. Last guy here. Guy I really like. His name is Sion James, another Duke guy. I like this dude because he's a worker. He's a worker. This is my favorite thing about Sion James right here. He is a greatly improved shooter. So over his first 3 years of college basketball, Sion James shot 29% on catch and shoot threes on 148 attempts. That's not good. And then as a senior with Tulane, because he transferred to Duke this year, in his senior season with Tulane, he shot 40% from three. He shot 40% on catch and shoot threes and 49% last year as a super senior with Duke. Okay, around the same number of attempts his first 3 years, 148, and then his last 2 years, 134. So he is a greatly improved shooter. Which tells me that this is a guy who works on his game. And look, if you can catch and shoot in the NBA, Sion James, also a pretty good athlete. If you're athletic and you can catch and shoot, then like you're probably going to find some place to play in the NBA. He can also really handle the basketball. That's another thing that I like about him. He's a smaller wing. I don't think he's quite a guard just because of how big he is. Standing somewhere around 6'6" with shoes on. But he can really handle the ball. Okay, he isn't like a get my own shot ball handler. He's like, I'm going to control the game. I can bring the ball up against pressure. Okay. If you need him to get a shot in the last 5 seconds, probably not what you want, but maybe he develops that at some point down the line. Defensively, this dude can guard, man. He can guard, which always makes me smile. I love guys who can just get in a stance and say, you're not going to score on me. And they're usually right. He was one of the best defenders in the ACC last year, right? He's strong, he's long, he's agile, and he just plays hard. Like, he just has a really good motor. And part of why the Pacers were so tough to beat this year is because of the motor with which they play. So really likes Zion James. He's got some issues, though. If he didn't, he'd be going in the first round. Doesn't shoot it great off the bounce, which is fine because he's not going to have the ball a ton. Like, he's not. Like, maybe a little bit this year, but once Halliburton comes back, he's not going to be a guy who's, bringing the ball up the floor and shooting it off the bounce. Like, that's not what he's going to be. He doesn't take very many mid-range pull-ups. He doesn't really have a float game, which is fine. He doesn't have to do that. If he can spot up, make threes, and guard, he'll be fine. And he's going to have a role to play somewhere with some team. Maybe it's the Pacers, maybe it's not, in the NBA. So very, intrigued to kind of see who takes him. Maybe it's the Pacers there with that 38th pick. Will probably be gone before the 54th pick. I talked quite a bit about who the Pacers could take with that 54th pick last night, or yesterday during my show. And then, so I'll probably touch on that again here at some point today, just to kind of give a little bit of a refresher. And then breaking news in the world of the Indiana Fever just broke. I'll tell you what it is when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket as we continue to talk about the NBA draft. Round 1 happened last night. We got round 2 going on tonight. Starts at 8 o'clock. The Pacers have not one but 2 picks after making a trade with the San Antonio Spurs, sending them a future second-round pick and cash considerations. Poor cash considerations bouncing around the league like crazy. I talked about this quite a bit yesterday, so I just want to quickly refresh some. Actually, no. We have breaking news for the Indiana Fever. I will talk about the Pacer draft in a minute. Caitlin Clark will not play tonight. She has been sidelined with an injury. Okay? She has been sidelined with an injury. She has something wrong with her left groin, and yeah, that's all that we really know. So she is not going to play tonight, which, is obviously not good at all. Yeah. So I don't know if you're going to watch the game tonight or not now. I know the game is at home. We will see how it looks and how it goes, but Caitlin Clark is not going to play tonight. Ankle injury to start the year. Now she's got a groin injury. It's tough, Yeah, really nothing else there. They're going to host the Los Angeles Sparks at 7 o'clock. There's currently no line out for it because the news just broke that she isn't going to play tonight. So we'll see how it goes. But this Los Angeles Sparks, they're not very good. This isn't a game where the Fever should need Caitlin Clark to win. Obviously, if she was there, that would make things just a little bit easier. And we'll kind of see how things go from there. But no Caitlin Clark tonight against the Los Angeles Sparks. Now, that may free up some of your time to watch the NBA draft if you would like to listen to, Malika Andrews and Kendrick Perkins and Jay Billis talk about all these draft prospects. What doesn't make any sense to me is ESPN employs Bob Myers, a guy who drafted Draymond Green in the second round. And for some reason, that guy's not on the panel to talk about what these NBA teams are looking for when it comes to second round picks or even what they're looking for when it comes to first round picks. It's more ESPN stuff where they're just doing things that don't make any sort of sense whatsoever. But tonight, be on the lookout for three potential players that the Pacers could take tonight. I went over these guys yesterday, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'd like to talk about the actual decisions that were made last night. Mohamed Faye, that is the guy that I would like to see the Pacers take tonight with that 54th overall pick. Obviously, now depending on what they do at 38, Mohamed Faye is a big center from Senegal. He's currently a 20-year-old pro in Italy. Big, athletic, pretty raw, right? But there's clearly some talent there. 7 feet tall, 7'4" wingspan, moves pretty well, finishes around the rim, and more importantly, he can rebound, which is really important. So, would love to see a guy like Mohamed Faye, be a Pacer and be taken with that 54th pick. He's the kind of guy that you send to play for the Noblesville Boom, the G League team for the Indiana Pacers. You can send him there for a couple years as he kind of improves a little bit, works on the touch with the left hand, and just kind of gets a little bit more experience. So Mohamed Faye would love to see him. Caleb Love, I don't think would be a bad option if they, decide to take a bigger player with that 38th pick. Caleb Love, he's the 6'4" guard out of Arizona. He can score the basketball. He can score, right? He can shoot it, right? He can finish at the rim. Nice little mid-range game. He can get in a stance and guard. He's got some decision-making issues. Doesn't shoot it great off the bounce, but once again, when you draft a player, you're not just thinking about what can they do this year. They're thinking about what can he do 3 years from now when Tyrese Halliburton's back. And Caleb Love's the kind of guy who, if he carved out a role coming in off the bench and scoring the basketball for somebody, that wouldn't really be any sort of surprise. Jalen Moore, another guy who the Pacers could take tonight. Big wing out of Oklahoma, 6'7", 7'2" wingspan. very athletic. He can defend multiple positions, plays hard, cuts well, finishes well because of the athleticism that he has. He can catch and shoot it a little bit. Not super great with the ball in his hands, though. Shot takes probably a little bit too long, but this is another guy who, you throw him in the G League for a year, and he's going to eventually, I think, find a way to make an NBA roster and be a relatively impactful guy. So last night, the NBA draft happened, and the NBA's got to fix some things. And, I'm not going to rant about this next thing for too long, because you can find this rant just about anywhere, but they've got to fix the hat situation. Here is Scott Van Pelt last night talking about the draft and the issue with these hats.
The emotion I loved. I'm going to scream about the hat situation. It's not the league's too smart to have the moment that they've waited their whole life for be a picture in the wrong hat. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know why they can't fix it.
Scott Van Pelt right there. So if you don't know what he's talking about, essentially, NBA trades can't be finalized until July 6th. And so last night, for example, the Houston Rockets traded the 10th pick to the Phoenix Suns. But because trades can't be finalized until like July 6th or whatever the date is, sometime after the NBA draft, that's the important part, it is still technically the Houston Rockets pick. And so even though Maluak, the big 7-foot center out of Duke, even though he's going to play for the Phoenix Suns, and the Phoenix Suns were the team that drafted him, last night, when he takes his photo with Adam Silver, he's standing in a Rockets hat, even though he may never play for the Houston Rockets, which I think is kind of funny. But, exactly what Scott Van Pelt said. Can we fix this? We know that the trade's going to happen. Can we just give them the right hat? Please. Please. My favorite moment, though, of the NBA draft last night, the Utah Jazz take Ace Bailey with the 5th overall pick. And it made me smile. It made me so happy. I love it so much. Here is the ESPN desk, Jonathan Giovanni, talking about Ace Bailey and how the Utah Jazz were one of the teams he did not want to play for.
This was not one of his preferred destinations, Utah. He was hoping to get to either Washington, New Orleans, or Brooklyn. The Utah Jazz selected Ace Bailey knowing that. This is a little bit of a stunner, but if you think about it, this is an outstanding place for Ace Bailey. They have a wide open wing situation. They have a huge need for a star in his mold. They have an outstanding coaching staff. I think Ace Bailey is going to recover from this very quickly.
Jonathan Giovanni right there, Draft Express. That's who he does his work for. He, just talking right there about Ace Bailey. I love that the Jazz were like, hey, Ace, would you like to come and work out for us? And Ace Bailey was like, nah, I'm good. I would like to go play for Washington or Brooklyn. And the Jazz were like, okay, that's fine. We're going to take you anyway. What are you going to do? Not play in the NBA? Danny Ainge, just doing Danny Ainge things. And it makes me so happy. I love so much that he did that because like what? You're going to have an 18-year-old that's never played a minute in the NBA dictating where he goes? That's ridiculous. I'm so glad that the Utah Jazz were like, nah, bro, come out here to Salt Lake. Can't wait to see ya. Can't wait for you to play alongside Keontae George and Walter Clayton Jr., another guy that they drafted last night. By the way, I love that they took him. That guy's going to show up and be really good immediately. I really liked what the Utah Jazz did last night, acquiring both Walter Clayton Jr. and Ace Bailey. Ace Bailey, obviously more of a long-term play, but Walter Clayton Jr. is the guy who's going to be able to step in and play immediately. The Grizzlies traded up for Cedric Coward, or as Malika Andrews called him, Colin Coward. And great trade by them. Cedric Coward's a guy who's going to show up and just be impactful immediately. He's going to guard. He's going to make threes. He can score it on the block if he gets a smaller guy on him. Love that move from the Memphis Grizzlies. And talking about, all of the good things that happened, there are some things that happen that make you wonder, like, what in the world are you talking about? What in the world are you doing? Yang Hansen. I say that name. You're probably like, I don't know who that is. Yeah, because Yang Hansen was a projected second-round pick. a year after taking Donovan Clingan, and 2 years after trading for DeAndre Ayton, the Portland Trailblazers have added another center by the name of Yang Hansen from China. They took him 16th overall. Could have gotten him tonight, round 2. But nope. Portland was like, we're going to take him 16th because we think he's that good. And he might be, right? This is the thing about the NBA draft. It is. Like as of right now, you got people like me saying, took him way too early. And I'm kind of annoyed because as soon as the Pacers made the trade for the 38th pick, I was like, Yang Hansen, very possible guy that could be taken here. Big center who can rebound and, passes the ball pretty well and finishes around the rim. I like this guy. And then the Trailblazers were like, nah, man, we're going to take him 16th, which is still just an incredible, incredible thing that happened last night. But yeah, I can't believe that they did that. The Brooklyn Nets garnered a lot of respect and praise going into the draft because at the start of the season, as we continue to talk about things that don't make any sense, at the start of the season, the Brooklyn Nets had 0 first-round picks this year. Last night, they had 4. That's great GM work. You hear about how great this draft is and how great it's going to be, and it's like, all right, cool, man. 4 first-round picks. Wow. Very impressive. I see what you did there, Brooklyn Nets. And and then they proceed to take not 1, not 2, but 3 point guards and Danny Wolf, a center who's really probably going to play point guard. So at the 8th pick, they took Igor Demin, the I believe he's Russian, the Russian kid out of BYU. And it's like, oh yeah, that's I don't love Demin, but hey, there's definitely worse options you could take. And then they take Nolan Traore, a guard from France, the 19th pick. And then, oh man, they had another pick in there somewhere. See, this is why I don't like all the traded stuff. There we go. And then they take another guard, Ben Serif from Israel. And then they take Danny Wolf. That just doesn't make any sort of sense to me whatsoever. And I see teams do what the Nets did last night. And I see what the Pelicans did. The Pelicans traded for Jordan Poole the other day. And then we're like, who would work great with Jordan Poole? Jeremiah Fears. Let's let, and that's not even the worst thing that the Pelicans did last night. They wanted to trade up 10 spots. That way they could acquire Derek Queen. Right. So they traded up from 23 to 13. And the way that they got that done was by giving up their first round pick next year. The Atlanta Hawks were like, absolutely. You're going to be terrible again this year. We would love your unprotected first. Kevin Pritchard, thank you for having half of a brain. More than half a brain. Okay. Kevin Pritchard is just very, very good at his job. And I'm very, very thankful for it because I know the people in New Orleans and Brooklyn right now are probably going absolutely nuts about what the Nets and the Pelicans did last night. The one thing about last night that I didn't like, that really stunk. I had a blast last year talking about the NBA draft because I got to talk about Zach Edey and I got to talk about Khalil Ware. Khalil Ware gets taken just outside the lottery. Zach Edey, top 10 pick. And that to me was just, it's a lot of fun talking about IU and Purdue guys. And I hate that I'm not getting to discuss any IU or Purdue basketball players getting their name called last night. And I don't think I'm going to unless there's a player that I'm missing out on in terms of guys that, might play in the league. The big fat kid at IU, he's probably not going to get drafted. He's going to go play overseas. I know that Luke Goody's the best player ever, but he's not going to get drafted. He's, trying to play another year of college basketball. So it's just, disappointing. I'm really hoping that Coach DeVries is able to really kind of bring in a lot of talent to IU that he wins with, most importantly, but also guys that can legitimately play in the league. Because I don't think it's a coincidence that Duke won a ton of games last year and they had, 3 guys get drafted in the top 10 last night. Two of those guys obviously going in the top 5. So just a really impressive night last night. Once again, round 2 of the NBA draft last night, or is tonight. Geez, tonight, 8:00. No Caitlin Clark playing tonight for the Indiana Fever. She, has got some sort of left groin injury, and that's obviously very problematic for them. So, watch what you want to watch. I'll probably watch the Fever and keep my eye on the draft, because why in the world would you watch the draft when Shams is just going to tweet out everything that happens, or the ESPN account is going to tweet out everything that happens? So when we come back here in about 4 minutes, I've got some closing thoughts on the draft and some of the decisions made by these teams last night. Some that I like, some that I didn't like. I'll tell you what they are when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X_Jonathan Smith to watch the show there. Follow me there. You can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app. Today's show is sponsored by Holiday World and Splash and Safari. It's hot outside. Go cool off, ride roller coasters, feel the wind on your face, and then go hit up that water park. Water, oh man. It's been hot here as of late, so make sure you get down to Holiday World and Splash and Safari. We've got more tickets to give away. We're going to give them out here in about 40 minutes. 317-228-1430. That is the number when that time comes around, thinking around 11:20 again, to give those tickets away to Holiday World and Splash and Safari. They've got an awesome, fireworks show and drone show going on right now to celebrate the 4th of July. You don't want to miss it. Get down to Holiday World, and you're going to have a chance to do that for free by calling in here in about 40 minutes when we give away those tickets. Closing thoughts here on the NBA draft and the transactions that were made last night. Some things I liked, some things that just of course happened. Of course the Heat got Kasparis Yakushionis with the 20th pick, because this seems to always happen to Miami. Really good players tend to fall to them in the late teens, early 20s, because that is where, they pick every night. So, yeah, that's just the way that it goes for the Heat. You're in and you're out. And look, the Miami Heat are an interesting team, obviously a very well-ran organization, but they don't have a ton. With that being said, the Eastern Conference isn't very good this year. And, so we'll see. But I do think that the Heat, got a pretty good player with that pick. The Thunder got Nick Clifford because, of course, they did. And this is the start of it. The Oklahoma City Thunder are going to use the million picks that they've acquired over the past few years to consistently add role players around Chet Holmgren and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams as their roster ends up becoming more and more expensive. There was the first example of it last night. They go out and they draft Nick Clifford, a guy who's played a lot of college basketball, and he was able to step in there and be really good really fast. I said yesterday that I thought that Colin Knippel was going to have a pretty decent chance to win Rookie of the Year this year. I no longer think that, because he was drafted by the Charlotte Hornets, and I feel bad for him. He's going to stand in the corner. LaMelo Ball is going to take 100 million shots. None of them are going to be good shots. And Colin Knippel's going to be like, hey, man, I'm open. And LaMelo's going to be like, that's cool, bro. You just stay over there. And it's going to be really frustrating to watch, his talent get wasted there. In Charlotte, Trey Washington, drafted by the Wizards. Love that pick for them. The Wizards are actually building a pretty solid team. They've got some good players. But Bubba Carrington can play. Trey Johnson's, I think he's going to be the best scorer in this draft. And, Alex Sarr ended up being pretty all right last year. So we'll kind of see how things go from there. But there's still some good players on this board. This seems to me like a pretty solid draft class. As I mentioned, guys like Tyrese Proctor are still on the board. Guy who can really shoot it. John Tonji out of Wisconsin, a guy who can just kind of go score it. Janai Broom, out of Auburn, big post-up guy who can score it and rebound. Something that the Pacers probably wouldn't mind having as a backup center. Chaz Lanier out of Tennessee, a guy who can really shoot it. Adu Thero out of Arkansas. Ryan Kalkbrenner is still on the board. If he's there at 38, I hope that's the guy that the Pacers take with that pick. A big who can step out, knock down threes. He's big and he's long. He can block shots. He's a little thin. He probably had to put on a little bit of weight, to really kind of have an impact on defense. But that's a really good player that with the 38th pick, I think the Pacers would be ecstatic to get. Cam Jones, another good guard coming out of Marquette. He, can handle it, makes good decisions, does all those things. Kobe Bray coming out of Kentucky, a guy who can just really shoot the basketball. Kobe Sanders, another good player out of Nevada, guy playing for Steve Alford. So there's still some good players that the Pacers are going to have the opportunity of taking tonight with either that 38th or 54th pick of the draft tonight. Mark Sears still on the board. Grant Nelson, another big long guy who can shoot it, is still on the board as well. So still plenty of good players for the Pacers to choose from. Hopefully they pick the right one. And yeah, with that being said, speaking of picking the right one, I hope the Colts pick the right quarterback this year, whether that's Daniel Jones or that's, Anthony Richardson, either one. And there's a part of me that kind of hopes that it's Daniel Jones. That way we don't have to deal with all the Anthony Richardson hype nonsense. And there's already Colts hype out there. I was doing my due diligence the other day, trying to find articles to read and doing all that kind of stuff. And I stumbled across this article over on CBSSports.com from Josh Edwards. Here's what he had to say about the Colts and, why they might be good this year. He says, quote, Indianapolis finally spent on its secondary in free agency, but did lose a few pieces to the offensive line. Those two players missed a large portion of last season, which allowed rookies to gain valuable reps. Daniel Jones is not going to provide the level of quarterback play that every team is chasing, but it should be improved over last season. There's another assumption that Daniel Jones is going to be the starter. And more here from Josh Edwards. Tight end Tyler Warren was added as another outlet in the pass game. Some truth to this statement. The secondary is better. Bringing in, Charvarius Ward, a guy who was the number one corner on a team that played in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Like, that is an immediate upgrade. They drafted, a corner out of Iowa State. They, bring in a safety from Minnesota. So, yes, the secondary is better. That is a real thing. But is it enough of an improvement for the Colts to go from 8-9 to 10-7 and maybe make the playoffs? I don't know. Is it enough of an improvement to go from 8-9 to 9-8? I don't really know. We're going to find out because the most important position on the field is quarterback, and we still don't have an answer as to who that's going to be or how good they're going to play. Tyler Warren does make the Colts passing game better, no matter who is playing quarterback, right? Having a guy who can kind of control the middle of the field. I still think we're asking a lot from a rookie. If you think that this guy is going to be, Travis Kelce in year one, or Rob Gronkowski immediately, then I think that our expectation is a little bit too high. If Tyler Warren has like 60 receptions for 700 yards, I'd be really happy with that. And he scores like 8 touchdowns. I think that's a really good year. But he's not going to be some 1,000-yard receiver. I don't think Tyler Warren's going to catch 100 passes this year. I don't think he's going to have 1,200 receiving yards. I don't think he's going to have some crazy Brock Bowers rookie season like what we saw from him in Las Vegas last year. Yes, Tyler Warren makes the Colts passing game a little bit better. But is it enough to take this Colts team from 8-9 to 10-7 or 9-8? I don't know about that. And the comment of Daniel Jones is the comment that Daniel Jones is not going to provide the level of quarterback play that every team is chasing, which is true. But Josh Edwards continues and said, but it should be improved over last season. I don't know. Are we forgetting that Daniel Jones got benched for Tommy DeVito? Are we just forgetting that? Albert Breer just going out and making this assumption that because Anthony Richardson hurt his shoulder, and by the way, he will be back for training camp. He hurt his shoulder. Yeah, he's going to be back, but go ahead and give Daniel Jones that job. Josh Edwards doing the same thing right here. Daniel Jones just kind of assuming that he's going to be the starter. It's not necessarily true. Once again, the dude got benched for Tommy DeVito. And I think it's C. Fitch who keeps saying, who was the last quarterback to succeed in New York? And the answer is Eli Manning. But here's the thing. How many of those quarterbacks have been good? Seriously, how many of those quarterbacks have you looked at and been like, oh, that guy's legitimately good? Not many. If you seriously. I mean, when you work through the list of starting quarterbacks, so In 2004, that's when Eli Manning really kind of took over. Kurt Warner started 9 games. Eli Manning started 7, right? And then 2005 through 2016, Eli Manning was the starter time and time again. 2017, Eli Manning started 15 games. Geno Smith started 1. And then 2018, Eli Manning started all 16 games. And then it's from 2020 forward that Daniel Jones has been the starting quarterback. And none of these guys have been good. Obviously, Daniel Jones hasn't been very good. Colt McCoy got some starts in there. Colt McCoy, not very good. Mike Glennon had 4 starts in the year of 2021. Is Mike Glennon like a good quarterback that other people have found success with? I would argue not. Jake Fromm, we know all about Fromm here. Not a good player. 2022, Daniel Jones started 16 games. Davis Webb started 1. Has Davis Webb found success anywhere else? I don't even know if that guy's in the league anymore. Daniel Jones started 6 games in 2023. Tommy DeVito started 6. Tyrod Taylor started 5. Tyrod Taylor's a journeyman. Like that dude's been a backup quarterback everywhere. Tommy DeVito, geez. Daniel Jones, 10 starts last year. Drew Lock started 5 games. Drew Lock had 1 good game last year. The Colts, that's it. Okay? And this is after, being traded twice. By the way, he's in Seattle now. And then, Tommy DeVito, of course, started 2 games. Like, I just, this assumption that Daniel Jones is going to be the starter and is going to be, an improvement at quarterback for the Colts this next year that some, not all, but some of these media people are making is just absurd. It's like, did you watch this guy play quarterback? Did you watch this guy play quarterback for Brian Daboll, who, by reputation, is one of the better head coaches in the NFL? One of the better offensive play callers in the NFL. Because here's what happened with Daniel Jones. They made the playoffs once. They won a playoff game. A year in which Daniel Jones basically ran the football just as often as he threw it. Sound like any other quarterback we have here in Indy? I think it sounds an awful lot like Anthony Richardson. And they won a playoff game on the road against the Vikings and Kirk Cousins. Every year after that, he's been terrible. And I go back to this baseball analogy because I think there's a lot of truth to it in sports. In baseball, when a prospect gets called up, when a hitting prospect gets called up, what happens? They're throwing a lot of fastballs. It's like, all right, let's see if this kid or this new guy, let's see if he can consistently hit and find barrels against a Major League Baseball pitcher's fastball. And if the answer to that question is yes, then you start mixing in the changeup. Can this kid hit a changeup? Yes, he can. Okay. Can this kid hit a slider? He can. Okay. Can this guy hit an over-the-top breaking curveball? Oh, no? Oh, fantastic. We're going to throw him this pitch over and over and over and over again until he figures it out. And the Bryce Harpers of the world and the Mike Trouts and the Barry Bondses and the Sammy Sosas, you know what they do? They figure it out. They make the adjustment to be able to hit whatever pitch they've struggled with after getting called up. And then pitchers change the way that they attack that hitter again. And then guess what? That hitter then has to figure out what other adjustment they need to make so that they can hit that pitch. And there's this constant tweaking of this is how I'm going to attack you, and you have to adjust. Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll figured out a way to beat defenses. And then defenses adjusted, and Daniel Jones hasn't been the same since. This jumping to the conclusion of Daniel Jones is going to make the Colts better just because he's better than Anthony Richardson isn't true in the slightest, because he's not very good either. If he was, then the Giants wouldn't have just released him last year. They would have kept him around, and they didn't. Daniel Jones is not solving the Colts' problems, and I'm just not convinced that this Colts team is going to be very good for one more reason that I'll get to when we come back here in about 4.5 minutes.
Sponsored by Rumble. Join millions who trust Rumble's top live streaming personalities to break down the news that matters in real time. Miss the live stream? Catch the full video replay on demand with zero censorship. Download the Rumble app from your Apple Play or Google Play store today and choose from thousands of creators covering everything from financial markets to daily events and more. Choose an open internet and free expression. Choose rumble.com today.
Let's do this. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. You want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith. To watch the show there, maybe you're listening via that Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And I've been talking a little bit about the Colts here, and I hate the assumption that Daniel Jones is just going to show up and like make this Colts team better. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. Like, this is the guy who got benched for Tommy DeVito. I mean, come on, really? And we also need to remember that the Colts offensive line got worse. 2 guys left in the offseason. Will Fries, one of the best offensive guards in football, gone to Minnesota. Ryan Kelly, not as good as Will Fries, a bit older of a player, gone. And I thought that the Colts offensive line to start the year last year was good. It's pretty impressive. Creighton running lanes for Jonathan Taylor, giving Anthony Richardson time to throw the football, all that good stuff. And then what happened? Will Fries and Ryan Kelly both get hurt. And what happened after that? Matt Gonsalves and Tanner Bortolini started playing on the offensive line. And what happened when that started? The offensive line got worse. I read that quote from the Josh Edwards article over on CBSSports.com where he's trying to make a case for the Colts being a little bit better and all this kind of stuff. And in it, he mentions the offensive line where he says Indianapolis finally spent on its secondary and free agency, but did lose a few pieces to the offensive line. Those 2 players missed a large portion of the season, which allowed rookies to gain valuable repetitions. Here's the thing. When rookies play well, that is never the wording that is used. It's never the wording. If there's like a rookie who's a backup who then gets to play and they play well, writers will say something like, Tanner Bortolini emerged as a real player after Ryan Kelly got hurt. Or Matt Gonsalves had really good moments at offensive guard after Will Fries got hurt. That will be kind of how they word things. When they say they got valuable reps, what? Translation, they didn't play well, but they're young and they'll learn. I hope they did, because neither one of them were very good along the offensive line last year after both of those guys got hurt. And we can talk about, the importance of all these different players. We can talk about Daniel Jones, and we can talk about Anthony Richardson. Trust me, I'm going to talk about him a lot as we get closer and closer to football season. Training camp, less than a month away. When it starts, I promise, we're going to talk about Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson pretty much every single day, because we have a legitimate quarterback competition going on at training camp. Okay, like this job isn't Daniel Jones's. I don't think the job is Anthony Richardson's. I thought it was, and then Anthony Richardson hurts his shoulder. And I'm sure that made the Colts staff and Chris Ballard and the rest of the people in that building rethink things a little bit. All right. And so now I do think that we've got a legitimate competition going. And just the idea that Daniel Jones is just going to show up and make this team better when the offensive line got worse, that's just not very convincing. Okay. If you wanted to, point to any excuse as to why Daniel Jones wasn't very good in New York outside of the fact that he's not very good, it would be the offensive line. The offensive line in New York, not very good. Not very good for either of the teams up there, the Jets or the Giants. And now he's going to come down here to Indy. And I get it. Quentin Nelson, offensive guard, love him. Raymond's fine. I think he's a good left tackle. I don't think he's a great one. Braden Smith, is he going to be able to hold up and play all year this year, or is this going to be another year where he plays 8 games and then doesn't play again? That is the question. And so, we'll see kind of how the offensive line shapes out this season. I know that they spent some draft picks on it, but I'm just not convinced that Chris Ballard, the offensive line guru, I'm not convinced that he's going to be able to put together a good enough offensive line for Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson to reach whatever we think the ceiling of their season could be. And that's where it starts for teams. Like teams that make deep playoff runs do not have bad offensive lines. Why were the Eagles so good last year? They had one of the best offensive lines in football. Why were the Detroit Lions so good this year or last year? They had one of the best offensive lines in football. Why are the 49ers usually pretty good? Their offensive line, usually pretty good. The Packers, why do they seem to never have a down year? Why do they seem to have this ability to just kind of like bring in a new quarterback every decade, and that quarterback just shows up and is great immediately? You know why? Because the Packers always have a really good offensive line. And, we talk about quarterbacks and their ability to uplift other positions. Like the Kansas City Chiefs, they don't need great wide receivers because they have Patrick Mahomes. It's a very simple reality. The Baltimore Ravens, they don't need great wide receivers because they have Lamar Jackson. The Bills don't need a great run game because they have Josh Allen. Now, obviously, it's nice to have those things, but they aren't necessities. When you have a quarterback that's not one of those guys, your offensive line has the ability to uplift them. Kirk Cousins, with 2.5 seconds to throw the football, is a very different quarterback than Kirk Cousins with 3.5 seconds to throw the football. Dak Prescott, very different quarterback when he has 2.5 seconds to throw the football as opposed to when he has 3.5 seconds to throw the football. And that is for everybody. Like Patrick Mahomes with 3.5 seconds to throw the football is by far the best quarterback on the planet. Patrick Mahomes with 2.5 seconds to throw the football, pretty good. Still great, but much more beatable. And Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson with 2.5 seconds to throw the football behind this offensive line with this very average group of wide receivers. I know we're excited about Tyler Warren, but he doesn't make this Colts offense all of a sudden just unstoppable. He doesn't do that. So now you're going to have Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson behind an offensive line that's giving them like 2.5 seconds to throw the football. Do you know what that means? It means turnovers. This was an offensive line. Once again, Chris Ballard is supposed to be the offensive line guy. If this was an offensive line that was giving these guys 3.5 seconds to throw the football, I'd feel great, no matter who is the quarterback this year, about the Colts' chances to win 9 or 10 games. No more than that. Because I'm not convinced that this roster is good enough to do that. But the offensive line doesn't seem like it's going to be good enough to do that this year. So can this Colts team get back over 500? I don't know. Probably not. Because the offensive line isn't going to be good enough to elevate these quarterbacks to a point where they can play at a 9-8 or 10-7 level or 10-7 quarterback level. I don't think that the offensive line of the Colts is going to be good enough to allow them to do that. Breaking news that came out earlier today. The Indiana Fever superstar, Caitlin Clark is not going to play tonight. Apologies if you got tickets for the game. They're playing against the Los Angeles Sparks, a bad basketball team, or at least a not very good basketball team. That's probably so. Yeah. So, but either way, like whether Caitlin Clark plays tonight or not, like the Fever should win this game. Okay, the Sparks are 4-11. Even without Caitlin Clark, they're still a 5.5-point favorite. It's going to be a lot of Kelsey Mitchell. It's going to be a lot of Aaliyah Boston, which is fine because last game on the road in Seattle against a good Seattle Storm team, it was Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell who led the way. Kelsey Mitchell, 8 of 14 from the field, scoring 26 points. Aaliyah Boston down on the block, finishing around the bucket, a little 31-8. Love that. And that's a really important thing. Like, look, like every team in the WNBA makes the playoffs. It's very hard to not make the playoffs in the WNBA. It just is. And because of that, I really don't mind Caitlin Clark missing a couple of games here and there. Like, let her get healthy. And more importantly, this allows room for you to build some depth within the season. So, Jonathan, what do you mean by that? Obviously, when Caitlin Clark is out and she's hurt, like Kelsey Mitchell has to do a little bit more, and Aaliyah Boston has to do a little bit more, and Lexi Hull is going to play a few more minutes. By the way, she had her first double-double the other night against the Seattle Storm. Okay, Sophie Cunningham is going to be asked to do a little bit more. And like you get better when more is asked of you. And when you're an Indiana Fever team that has like legitimate title aspirations, if you want to beat the New York Liberties of the world, then your role players like have to be better. Like they have to be legitimately good, and they have to have the ability from time to time, not all the time, to do a little bit more than what is asked of them. Like, why were the Indiana Pacers good enough to make the NBA Finals this year? Because they had role players who were able to do a little bit more than is asked of them from time to time. You know, you'd have these random outbursts from TJ McConnell. You'd have these random outbursts from Obi Toppin. You'd have these random great games from Miles Turner and so on. And when I look at the Indiana Fever, I'm not convinced that they have that. You know, like when I watch them play, it's like, all right, Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell, all three better be really good tonight. Because if not, probably going to lose. Seriously. Whereas, like, you watch the Pacers and you watch some of these other teams, it's like, all right, like, if their best player has a B-plus game, they can still win because these role players are really good. It's how the Pacers were. You know, Tyrese Halliburton could have, a B-minus game, and they could find a way to win because McConnell or Toppin or whoever else could find a way to be super impactful. And I think that that's kind of the next step for the Fever. And then playing some games without Caitlin Clark, kind of allows them to work on that just a little bit. So we'll see what they look like tonight without her. They should still win the game. 5.5-point favorites against a bad Los Angeles Sparks team. Okay, like this is a game that they should win, and we'll kind of see how they look going forward. The NBA draft is in full swing. We had round 1 last night. By the way, today's show sponsored by Holiday World. Almost said Holiday Inn. Sponsored by Holiday World and Splashin' Safari. Get down there, go to Holiday World and Splashin' Safari. It is a great place to spend some time. They've got an awesome thing going on right now through August 3rd. You can catch Holiday World's In the Sky drone show and firework spectacular. You can celebrate this 4th of July holiday at Holiday World's in Splashin' Safari. Enjoy thrilling rides all day long. Stick around as they light up the night sky with Holiday World's In the Sky drone show and firework display. You don't want to miss it. We're giving away tickets in this upcoming break, right? Probably sometime here around 10:18, 10:20, somewhere in there. And yeah, it's going to be great. So get your phone out. We're going to give those tickets away here pretty shortly. 317-228-1430. That is the number whenever we give those tickets out. We're not giving them out quite yet. A few thoughts here really quickly on the Pacers' potential draft selection tonight. They now have the 38th and 54th pick in the NBA draft. And very intrigued to see who they pick. There were some questions like, why would the Pacers acquire the 38th pick? And I think it comes back to the salary cap and the way that the new CBA is and the way that all the aprons work. So the luxury tax is something that has to be paid when you exceed the quote-unquote salary cap, right? And for the Pacers, they're pretty close. Like, if they were to keep things the way that they are right now and sign Miles Turner, I believe that they would be over. That's why there's some discussion around that they may move somebody this offseason. Because the Pacers are obviously coming off of this NBA Finals run. They're a really good basketball team. But let's just be honest. You're not winning the title if Tyrese Halliburton doesn't play. And I'm sure that, the ownership group of the Indiana Pacers doesn't want to pay the luxury tax if they're not going to have a chance to win the title, right? They haven't paid the luxury tax in forever. And there's a reason for that, because it's expensive. It's a tax. And if you're not going to be good enough to win the title, why would you go into that, kind of area where you have to pay extra money to be worse? Because that's the reality of it. Like, the Pacers probably aren't getting to Game 7 of the NBA Finals next year without Tyrese Halliburton. So I believe that they made this trade where they're sending a future second-round pick and cash considerations to the San Antonio Spurs for the 38th pick in today's draft in an effort to pick up a point guard, because they're going to need one with Tyrese Halliburton out, in an effort to pick up a point guard who can kind of fill some of those minutes and stay under the tax, because a second-round draft pick, their salary is going to be less than signing a Dennis Schroeder or a D'Angelo Russell or some other guard to a vet minimum. Okay, so I believe that we're going to see the Pacers take a guard with that 38th pick. There's one guy in particular that I really like. They could go center. There's another guy that I really like with that 38th pick who could probably take some of those backup center minutes. And I'm going to tell you who those guys are when we come back in 4 minutes. But during the break, pull out your cell phone, 317-228-1430. We're giving away tickets to Holiday World right now. Today's show sponsored by Holiday World and Splashin' Safari. They got this awesome drone show and fireworks show going on right now. We're giving away tickets to Holiday World in this break, 317-228-1430. Call in for your chance to win some Holiday World and Splashin' Safari tickets. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, my thoughts on who the Pacers could take tonight with both the 38th and 54th picks in this year's NBA draft.
Hi folks, Kelson Carter, the Prince of Plumbing for Carter's My Plumber. Summer means family vacations, baseball, and everything outdoors. But for many families, including my own, money is tight. So we've created money-saving coupons on our website to help you save money this summer with Carter's My Plumber. If you sprung a leak, need a drain unstopped, or lose your hot water, call one of the few remaining family-owned plumbing companies in Indy, Carter's My Plumber. Call 859-9999 or online at
CartersMyPlumber.com.
The United States Soccer Federation presents the U.S. Soccer Podcast.
The United States have the lead.
The United States in full command.
And didn't she enjoy that one?
Never miss a game.
Look at the pace she puts on this ball with that little slip run. Great first touch.
Never miss a moment.
Get a hold of it.
The back of the net.
Great goal for the United States.
The U.S. Soccer Podcast. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe watch it on X _ Jonathan Smith. And as always, you can also listen on that Indy Sports Ticket app that you can download wherever you get your apps. You can also listen to the Dan Dockett Show right there on that app as well. The Indiana Pacers have now not one but two draft picks tonight in the second round of the NBA draft. Why they don't do both rounds on the same day, I don't really know. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. But, hey, Ooh, bless me. But hey, I don't decide what goes on ESPN, and that's probably a good thing. But the Pacers do have two draft picks tonight, and I'm very intrigued to kind of see what direction they go in. They're trying to navigate the cap. I'm assuming that they want to stay under that first apron, given that Tyrese Halliburton isn't going to play this year. I think that if he was playing, I don't think that they would have made this trade. I think that they would have just kind of looked to free agency to kind of fill their holes, go and extend Miles Turner and do all those things. And then, just kind of see where things go from there. Because if you have Tyrese Halliburton and the rest of this team, they just proved to you that you can win an NBA Finals with this group. Okay, the issue is you don't have Tyrese Halliburton this year. And so you're probably not going to win a title. And so with that being said, they still have to figure out, who are we going to have play point guard this year? With Tyrese Halliburton, tearing his Achilles and him not playing this year. I think with the 38th pick, they're going to take a point guard. That makes the most sense to me, but just because it makes the most sense to me doesn't mean that it makes the most sense to Kevin Pritchard. So, that guy's just a little bit smarter than I am. So I expect for them to take a point guard tonight. More specifically, I think that they're going to potentially take a guy like Tyrese Proctor. I think he makes a lot of sense for this Pacers team, because I think offensively, everything that he does well fits what this Pacers team kind of wants. He can handle the ball, really good at Duke this last year, and, playing kind of the screen and roll. Then again, a little bit easier when you got guys like Cooper Flagg and Maluwak, setting screens for you, two guys who were top 10 picks this year. But with that being said, you could have Tim Duncan screening for me, and it wouldn't really matter because I would probably mess up somewhere along the way. So Tyrese Proctor, just a really good player coming out of Duke, who can kind of play out of the screen and roll, makes good choices with the basketball, which is obviously a really important thing because the Pacers have to draft guys who make good choices with the ball because everyone touches the ball in this offense that they run. I think that'll happen even more often this year because there is no Tyrese Halliburton. Look, he doesn't dribble the air out of the ball ever. It's one of my favorite things about him. But if anyone was going to do it, it was going to be him, right? And so the ball's going to move a lot more. The Pacers have to add someone who makes good choices with the basketball. The other thing that I like about Tyrese Proctor, he can play on or off the ball. That, to me, is such an underrated skill in the NBA, at any level of basketball, really. Because if you can play with or without the ball, you just become more playable. And if you have to have the ball in your hands at all times, then if you're the 38th pick, then chances are you're not going to play very much if you have to have the basketball. So the fact that Tyrese Proctor is a guy who can play on the ball and kind of initiate some offense, I think that's a good thing for this Pacers team, team that needs a guy who can play a little bit of point guard. He's also a guy who can play off the ball, run around off screens, and catch and shoot because the kid can flat out shoot the rock. Right. And he got a lot of experience doing that this year because obviously the Duke had players like Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple initiating offense. So I really like Proctor. I think he fits pretty well with what the Pacers want to do. Very under control, plays at his own pace, doesn't really force stuff. That goes back to, his ability to make smart decisions with the basketball. He's got a very high basketball IQ. Like I said, makes the right reads and just is smart, always in the right spot on both ends of the floor. And defensively, if you're 6'6" with a 6'7" wingspan and you're always in the right spot, then, hey, I like your chances to have some sort of impact on defense. With that being said, he's going to go in the second round for a reason. He's got some weaknesses, and a lot of it just kind of has to do with his body. He needs to put on some weight. He only weighs like 183 pounds, and if you're 6'4", 183 pounds, like that's not good. Especially when you're about to play against grown men. So he needs to add some muscle, needs to, develop a little bit more physically, especially if he's going to handle the ball and he's got to deal with, some kind of more physical defenders. Like we saw Lou Dort kind of push Tyrese Halliburton around a little bit on the perimeter, right? It was really tough for the Pacers to run their offense within 30 feet of the basket because, love Halliburton, but he was small. And Lou Dort was kind of able to push him around a little bit because he was a little bit lighter. Proctor could kind of run into the same issue. And I really think that adding strength would fix some of the other issues that he has. He doesn't finish at the rim very well. He doesn't finish through contact because when you jump into somebody, it's easier to score if you keep going forward and you kind of bump them back as opposed to if you get bumped back. So he struggles a little bit scoring on the interior because of that lack of strength. Defensively, he's not very physical. But that's got to change because if you're going to play defense on this Indiana Pacers team, like you have to be physical. You just do. Like that is part of the identity of the Pacers. They are a physical defensive team. And so Tyrese Proctor got to work on that if you're going to be a guy that consistently gets rotational minutes in the NBA. Janai Broome, big guy from Auburn, almost won National Player of the Year, but it rightfully went to Cooper Flagg. I like Janai Broome. I don't know if he's a starting caliber center in the NBA, but I do think that he's a guy who can get some rotation minutes. I don't know if he's a playoff center. Probably, he's going to be a role player. And that's the thing with role players, right? Like, not every series is made for every player because every team you play, like their strengths and weaknesses are a little bit different. Like Tony Bradley didn't play a minute against the Milwaukee Bucks because that wasn't a good series for him. But he played minutes against the New York Knicks because the Pacers needed a little bit more size and a little bit more rebounding. And so we saw Tony Bradley play. Not saying that Janai Broome is Tony Bradley, but that's just the example of role players don't fit in every series. And Janai Broome is going to be a role player who doesn't fit in every series. With that being said, like, guy's a good player. He protects the rim. He's not a very explosive athlete. Like he's not blocking shots like Dwight Howard, where you got to shoot it up over the backboard to have a chance to get it over him. Janai Broome is going to block shots because he times shots well, and he just knows where to be. And he's 7 feet tall, and he's got a 7 foot wingspan. Okay, so that's kind of what allows him to block shots. Kind of think Marc Gasol. Not saying he is Marc Gasol, but just the idea of a non-explosive rim protector, being able to block shots. That's kind of what I think about when I think about Janai Broome. Rebounding, this dude can rebound, man. And we know that is the thing that the Pacers need. Okay, like they were not a great rebounding team. It felt like when they won the rebounding battle, they won games, and when they lost it, they lost. And so that is an area that has to be improved upon for them. Janai Broome's a guy who rebounded the ball really well on both ends last year. Obviously at Auburn, a little bit different rebounding in the NBA, but this is a grown man. Like Janai Broome is a grown man in every sense of those two words. And so he's big, he's physical, very strong dude who should be able to kind of help the Pacers rebound a little bit if the Pacers want to take him with the 38th pick, right? He can score on the block, right? So he's got really good touch around the bucket. So if he grabs an offensive rebound, you can trust that dude to go back up and finish and not have it roll off the rim time and time again. So I like his game. He sets good screens. Like I said, he's got good touch around the rim, so maybe he turns into a guy who can knock down a mid-range jumper here at some point. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see, right? So that's one of the weaknesses. He can't really stretch the floor, which isn't a necessity, but it's still just a really nice thing to have. Quickness-wise, laterally, this is why I don't think he would be an every playoff series kind of center, which this isn't a knock on him because this is – what's the right word? This is a struggle that a lot of centers have in the NBA. Like, believe it or not, most 7-foot guys aren't super quick laterally. And Janai Broome is not super quick laterally. So, if he has to switch onto a smaller player, good luck, man. That's not good, but I don't think that's really a knock because that's how a lot of centers in the NBA are. He's not a great playmaker out. Like I said, he sets good screens, but when he comes off the roll, doesn't always make the best choices. Like he can make the really basic ones, but he's not great playmaking out of the screen and roll, which is something that can be improved upon over time. Zion James is the last guy that I want to mention here. He's probably more of a wing just because he's thicker and he's very physical, but he does have the ability to handle the basketball. My favorite thing about him, though, his improved shot. This is a guy who you can tell works really hard. So over his first 3 years in college, he shot 29% on catch and shoot threes on 148 attempts. That's bad. That's not good. And then his senior season at Tulane and his super senior season at Duke, you see this incredible jump. So his senior year at Tulane, he shoots 39.5% on catch and shoot threes. That is major improvement. And it's like, all right, was that like a one-year outlier thing? No. Goes on to play at Duke last year, shot 49% on catch and shoot threes. And between those two seasons, he took 134 catch and shoot threes. Like that is a very impressive number from him, right? And if that number sticks around 40%, then he's going to have a place somewhere in the NBA because he defends, he can handle the basketball, and if you can catch and shoot at that level, then some team is going to want you. Okay, like I said, he can handle the basketball, which is really important for this Indiana Pacers team. Obviously a year without Halliburton. But if he can catch and shoot like that, he can play off the ball whenever Halliburton comes back. That is a very important thing to remember. If they take a guard, how do they fit in when Tyrese Halliburton comes back? Zion James doesn't have a good enough handle to be like a primary creator who's like initiating offense and doing all those things. But like within the flow of the offense, he should be fine. Think Aaron Nesmith, right? Who's like not a good enough ball handler to, like bring the ball up the floor and run the offense, but he's a good enough ball handler to come off a screen and take 3 dribbles. That's kind of where Zion James is. Okay, so like him, he's just a very willing passer, a very good passer as well. I think he would fit in very well offensively between the catch and shoot ability he showed the last 2 years, his ability to, kind of move within the flow of an offense and to make plays passing the basketball out of it. Defensively, one of the best defenders in the ACC last year. Strong, long, agile, and just works hard, man. Really like Zion James. I don't think this is the guy that the Pacers take, but if they did, I wouldn't be disappointed in any way, shape, or form. Because he's got some weaknesses, right? He doesn't shoot it off the dribble very great or very well, which to me is fine. Like I don't think that the Pacers are really going to ask him to do that a lot wherever he goes. I don't think he's going to be asked to create off the bounce a ton. Like he's not going to. Or in college, he didn't take very many mid-range pull-ups. He didn't have much of a float game either, which is fine. Like I said, I don't think the Pacers are really going to ask him to do that. And he's not really a primary creator either. Like I said, going to work off the ball and can make plays out of that, but he's not really going to bring the ball to the floor and play point guard for you. That's why he's really more of a wing. So, which is fine. Like he's going to be the 38th pick. Teams aren't going to ask him to create for everybody else. So really like his game. I think those are 3 pretty decent options for the Pacers, one at a different spot. So the guard I would take is Tyrese Proctor. The big I would take is Jani Broome. And the wing that I would take is Zion James, even though he's probably a little undersized to play wing. But 38th pick, there's going to be some good players on the board. Can't wait to see who the Pacers take with that pick tonight. The NBA draft starts at 8 o'clock. And it's going to be good. The 54th pick, I talked about it a bit yesterday. Mohamed Faye is a potential guy that they could grab. Big center out of Senegal. They could take him with that 54th pick. Caleb Love, a guard who could come in, handle the ball, score a little bit. And then Jalen Moore, just a big prototypical wing out of Oklahoma. 6'7", 7'2" wingspan. Very good athlete who can really guard. So all 3 of those guys should be options at pick 54. And Zion James, Jani Broome, and Tyrese Proctor probably are your 4 options with that 38th pick. When we come back, in about 4 minutes, we'll recap a night filled with draft decisions. Some good ones, some bad ones, and some ones that just make me laugh when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. You want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there as well. Maybe you're listening on that Indy Sports Ticket app. No matter how you're listening, it is always greatly, greatly appreciated. Don't forget to tune into the Dan Dockett Show today from noon to 3 as well. Seth Greenberg getting the show started today, here in about 20 minutes. He'll have thoughts on the NBA draft last night. I'm sure he'll have thoughts on who is still left on the board as well. And then Rob Dibble, he's going to come on later on in the day at 2 o'clock. Obviously, a lot of decisions made last night in the NBA draft. Before we talk about those, once again, Caitlin Clark out tonight against the Los Angeles Sparks. This is still a game that the Indiana Fever should win. They are 5.5-point favorites despite Caitlin Clark being out. And yeah, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. Let her get healthy. Give Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston more reps with more responsibility. Make these role players step up a little bit, have a greater impact than what they've had so far this year. Well, Lexi Hull's been good. Outside of that, Sophie Cunningham, let's be a little bit better. Okay, I appreciate, the fact that she's standing up for Caitlin Clark and she's doing all of these different things. That's really cool. But can you score? Maybe have an assist, maybe rebound a little bit. I don't know. Just an idea. She's going to have plenty of opportunities to do that tonight with Caitlin Clark not playing. And the NBA draft happened last night. Some funny things, some good things, and some things that, make me glad that Kevin Pritchard is the president of basketball operations here in Indiana. Because some of the things that happened last night just didn't make any sort of sense. For example, the Brooklyn Nets garnered all this attention, and people were singing the Brooklyn Nets praises. Oh man, before the year started, they didn't have a single first-round pick. Last night, they had 4 in what's supposed to be a pretty good NBA draft. Would you like to hear what they did with all 4 of these picks? It is pretty incredible to hear what they did. So with the 8th pick, they take Igor Demin, a Russian guy who played for BYU last year, played guard. I like him. He's got some issues, obviously, but he could be a really good player. They make that pick. I'm like, hey, you're Brooklyn. You need everything right now. And then with the 19th pick, they took another guard, Nolan Traore from France. It's all right. Took another point guard. That's fine. That's cool. You can play those guys together, probably, I guess. And then the 26th pick comes around. And it's certainly they take a center. Maybe they take, a bigger guard, like a Liam McNeely, like a guy who could probably play the 3 because he's 6'8". No, they took Ben Seraph, another point guard from Israel. And then they had the 27th pick. I'm like, all right, here's where they take a center or a wing. No. Well, they did take a front court player, but it's Danny Wolf, a guy who is huge, yes, and is going to rebound and is going to do all those really important things. But Danny Wolf's a point guard, he's point forward. I just congratulations to the Nets on drafting 3-point guards and Danny Wolf. Fun fact: if you play an NBA game in Brooklyn this year, they're actually going to play with 2 basketballs. That's actually why the Nets took so many guards. I can't believe it. So I thought that was not the best use of draft resources last night. And then you've got what the New Orleans Pelicans did. The Pelicans, man. Oh my gosh. So they make this trade for Jordan Poole and a couple other guys. And then with the 7th pick, they take Jeremiah Fears. It's you have fun figuring out who's going to handle the basketball and take all the shots. But I get it. Jeremiah Fears was probably the best player on the board for them at that point. You're the Pelicans. You haven't won much of anything. So I get it. Take the guy that you think's really good. And then they were slotted to have the 23rd pick in the draft. But we learn, if you watch the broadcast, that the New Orleans Pelicans loved Derek Queen. And so they trade up 10 spots. They trade from the 23rd pick up to the 13th pick so that they can take Derek Queen. Not a bad move. Until you find out that they obviously gave up the 23rd pick this year, and they also gave up a first-round pick unprotected next year. That was the worst move of the night. And, you wonder why some of these teams are so bad for so long. And it's because they do stuff like this, where they overpay for Derek Queen, who's going to be a good player. And I don't mind them giving up a first-round pick next year, but it's got to be first-round pick, lottery pick protected or something like that. That didn't make any sort of sense to me. Didn't get that at all. But if Derek Queen ends up being amazing and the Pelicans are good next year, then it won't happen. The issue is I don't think that they're going to be very good next year. And they gave up what's probably going to be a top 10 pick for Derek Queen. Incredible to me. Another thing that happened last night that I thought was kind of weird. The Portland Trailblazers took Yang Hansen. I'm sure that I butchered that. It may be Hansen. He's a Chinese center who played in China this last year, played really well. And there's two things about this that don't make sense. First, if you look at every mock draft, and mock drafts can be wrong, so maybe everyone was wrong on this. Yang Hansen was going to be a middle of the second round pick. Yesterday, or today, last night, I guess, when I was getting ready for the show today, and I was looking at who could the Pacers take with the 38th pick, Yang Hansen was on the list. He was on my list of potential guys that the Pacers could legitimately take with that 38th pick. And then the Portland Trailblazers were like, nah, we're going to take him 16th. A guy that we could get in the second round, we're going to take right here just outside the lottery. A year after taking Donovan Clingan in the lottery, and 2 years after having traded for DeAndre Ayton. That's insane. That doesn't make they've got 4 centers on their roster right now between Robert Williams, DeAndre Ayton, and Donovan Clingan, and now Yang Hansen. Incredible. Once again, I'm so glad that Kevin Pritchard is the president of basketball operations here in Indy, because I think those are the 3 most perplexing moves made last night that I don't really understand. And then you have teams like the Utah Jazz that are just doing exactly what they should do. They took Ace Bailey 5th last night. That was awesome. I'm so glad that they did it for 2 reasons. One, Dan Dockich hit his bet. Okay? Root for your friends to hit their bets. And then secondly, he's a good fit for them. And I hated the idea of an 18-year-old who's played 0 minutes and 0 seconds in the NBA. I hate the idea of these guys coming out of college being able to control where they go. I don't like it, and it's probably dumb of me. But the reason why I didn't like it in this particular case is Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz are actually very well ran. That is a good organization. Danny Ainge is an excellent president of basketball operations. He's one of the better ones in the NBA. And the fact that Ace Bailey was like, I'm not going to work out for you because I want to go to Washington was insane to me. And I'm so glad that Danny Ainge was like, that's fine. You don't have to work out for us. I saw you play all year at Rutgers. Come on. You're coming to Utah. Get ready to learn Salt Lake City, man. And he's actually going to fit in really well there. I think Will Hardy's a really good head coach. I know he hasn't won a ton of games, but they clearly like him because even though he hasn't won a ton of games, they just signed him to an extension through 2031. He's the guy who's going to be able to bring in Ace Bailey, and they're going to be a really good spot for him. So thank you, Danny Ainge, for not, bowing down to some 18-year-old that's scored 0 points in the NBA. Okay. The Grizzlies, I loved their move. They traded with the Portland Trailblazers. They traded up to the 11th pick to take Cedric Coward, or as Malik Andrews called him, Colin Coward. And it's a good pick. He feels like Memphis, man. He feels like Memphis. I think that the best teams everywhere kind of feel like whatever city they're in. And Cedric Coward is like this dude who was overlooked, Division III, even though he'll tell you he wasn't very good, and he works his way up, and now he ends up being a lottery pick because of that. And when I think about Memphis, it's a place that I live 2 hours away from for a lot of my life. It's the kind of place it is. It is a hardworking, tough, gritty place. And when I look at Cedric Coward, he is a tough, hardworking, gritty player who just grinds his butt off. And, when you talk about, teams matching the reputation of their town, like the Pacers this year, that's a hardworking team that plays at the home of the Indy 500. And they were the fastest playing team in the NBA, and they worked their butts off, and they were tough. Felt a lot like Indy. That Cedric Coward pick feels a lot like Memphis, and I think that is a really good sign. I do think that the Jazz had the best round one, though, and draft grades are dumb, I know, but I like talking about it. Anyway, they not only take Ace Bailey with that 5th pick, who could potentially end up being a really good player. We'll see. I'm still not convinced. They also take Walter Clayton Jr., who's going to play point guard for them immediately, and he's going to be really good, and he's going to make a lot of shots, and he's going to make decisions with the basketball because he's played a lot of ball, and he should be able to show up and be good immediately because, that dude can flat out hoop, and I can't wait to see him play in Utah. I really like what they've got going on there. Keontae George took a slight step back this year. He was a lottery pick for them a couple years ago, but, if he can kind of figure it out a little bit, Lauri Markkanen, good player. I think he's a little overrated. But we'll kind of see how they look. Walker Kessler playing center is a solid young player as well. So Utah's got some stuff cooking out there in the West. My least favorite thing that happened, not necessarily a bad thing. The Charlotte Hornets took Con Knippel, and I hate it so much. I was so ready to purchase a Con Knippel Rookie of the Year ticket, and I can't do it anymore because he was drafted by the freaking Charlotte Hornets, and the Hornets are going to stick him in a corner, and they're like, all right, you're going to stand here. We're going to go set a ball screen for LaMelo Ball, even though we currently don't have a center because they don't have Nick Richards or Mark Williams anymore. Both of those guys are now in Phoenix. And the Hornets are like, yeah, and you're just going to stand there, and LaMelo may or may not pass you the ball. He's probably not going to because he doesn't pass the ball to anybody. And you're going to stand there in the corner. You're going to watch him take 25 shots a night. You're going to watch him make maybe 10 of them, and you're going to like it. Oh, and by the way, we're going to ask you to play a lot of defense because LaMelo doesn't do that either, and Brandon Miller, not a very good defender either. So have fun, Con. I just hate it. I feel like all of his talent is going to be wasted playing out there in Charlotte. So that really bummed me out. But then I felt kind of good again when Trey Johnson was taken by Washington. I do think that the Wizards are headed in a pretty decent direction as well. A lot of good guards. Alex Sarr looked pretty good last year. If you saw him play here in Indy, then you know that guy can play a little bit. Trey Johnson wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if he ended up being the best shooter or the best scorer, period. In this draft class, the one thing missing last night, we didn't hear a single IU or Purdue player's name called. Last year was a lot of fun talking about Khalil Ware and Zach Edey and kind of how those guys are going to impact or going to create impacts in the NBA. Didn't get to talk about that very much last night because no IU or Purdue player was called. I don't think we're going to hear an IU or Purdue basketball player's name called tonight either, which really kind of stinks. But, it is what it is. Hopefully Coach DeVries can, bring in a little bit more talent. That way we can talk about some of these IU guys playing in the NBA. That's going to do it here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the show. I greatly appreciate it, as always. The Dan Dockett Show is coming your way next. Seth Greenberg gets us started. Download the Indy Sports Ticket app so you can tune into The Real Jonathan Smith Show. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes. Thank you again for listening. I'll be back on the air again tomorrow from 10 to noon.